Hello, I'm Murph. I'm a programmer. I should make people feel young now. I've been a programmer for 46 years.
That's only 4 longer than me.
Right, what am I trying to do? This is kind of sort of an experience report. I'm just going to talk through and show you something like the code I wrote to solve a real problem that we had. Not a complicated problem, but one that actually solving had a high value to us. All right. So, as I said, simple problem. We have a big lump of data, and I've broken my slides. I knew that would happen. We have a big lump of data. We want to take a subset of that data. We want to run some fairly arbitrary filters on it. We want to show the filtered items, and then we want to update the properties of those items. It's the kind of sort of in-house business problem that I have all the time. So we have some constraints, and this is the one I don't know whether it will work or not. So again, slides messed up, but never mind, because new toys and you always break them. First of all, we know exactly who the users are, or in this case, the user. It's one, it's my boss. We have a relatively short timescale because I have too much to do. So there's that. And we have limited resources. So we need to pick things that the developer team is comfortable with. Hello, this is the developer team. And the deployable to Kubernetes is kind of incidental, but deploying it as a web app is reasonable. And I already know how to deploy it to Kubernetes. So the next thing is, what choices do I make? Well, I know .NET. I know F#, and HTMX I will come to. Much like Peter, I do not like JavaScript much. I don't have much practice with it. If you're thinking about a client web application, you tend to be thinking either something like Blazor, which I don't know, or front-end web development framework like React or Svelte or Vue or whatever. But that requires JavaScript, TypeScript really, and a complicated toolchain. And all of those things take time to learn. And I already know .NET really well. I already know C# and F# horribly well. I mean, it's got 20 years of C#, just about getting there, except it keeps changing. So that's kind of where we are. So new technology, or toys I haven't played with much yet. I'll start with Hello World. So let's do Hello World and demo something simple. This is always does something nice like that. This is the world's simplest Vista step. So I'm using .NET and F#. I'm going to use a framework called Falco, which is an F# specific framework that sits on top of ASP.NET. So we are creating a web application using the standard ASP.NET core web builder. So I'm not doing anything clever, I'm not using anything esoteric, I'm using everything that .NET gives us. And then, if I'm really lucky, yes, it will highlight it. So much like the minimal APIs that Peter showed you, I've got a minimal API. I'm going to do a get of the root, and I'm going to respond with plain text saying hello world. And then this is the bit where I go, does it work? Yes. That's what we're doing is we're waiting for it to build. But if you don't wait for it to build, you don't get the right things on the line. Right, can't quite see whether it's done there. It is, sorry, my bad. And it says hello world, it's text. Astonishing stuff, really clever. So, just returning text isn't going to give you much of a user interface. So to show that we can build actual web pages, we'll add a bit more. So this, Falco provides, in fact, all of the F# web frameworks provide a domain-specific language for doing markup. Mostly HTML, but you can do other things as well. So you can see exactly what this is. This is an HTML page with a header and a body, and an H1 with the text and hello world. The fun thing about this is a function page, and it returns a function, or the response from a function, which takes a list of attributes and a list of child elements. The body is a function that takes a list of attributes and a list of child elements, and the H1 is a function that takes a list of attributes and a list of child elements. So I've got a function that's calling a function that's calling a function that's calling a function. This is one of the things that I quite like about doing this stuff in F#. Rather than have the handling line will create a function, we're doing F#. Everything's a function. You're getting bored with this. So we're going to add a function which is a handler, which is the same as we had down here. And it's going to, the handler actually returns a function which takes the context. The context is the thing with the request and response and some other stuff attached to it. And it will return responsive HTML. Did I miss a step? No, I didn't. Which is the page that we just created, and there we go. And then we're going to also pull the endpoint out from here and stick it up there. So the endpoint is just a list with the get, with the handler, and calling the handler instead of doing it directly. And then if I'm really lucky, see, I have a genie buried in my code that's doing all this for me. There we go, it's running. Now we have Hello World in serif font, and that's an H1, so that was before. Still really haven't got very far into design and pretty, so we can actually make a proper web page here. As I said, it's all functions. So first thing we'll do is create a function that returns the head content for our web page. Just shrink it down again a bit. And then for the body, we'll define a header and a footer. Then we'll define a function. It needs to be up a bit so you can see it. Spend my entire life writing things. So we're going to have a function that's the body, and the body's going to have the header and the footer, and then we're going to pass some content in the middle. Then we're going to add a page function that has the head section and the body with the content in the middle. And that is basically a page template. Hindsight is easy. I should have called it layout. It would have made more sense, but I've called it page. I have to suffer for that for the rest of the day. And then so everything up from here is just a page template. You can go and hide it in a different file if you want. The actual interesting stuff now, we'll write some code that we want to use to generate the content that goes on the page. Because I've added some stuff in, I'm going to use static files. And that's it. So we've gone from returning a bit of text to returning a very simple bit of HTML to returning really so now we've got a header and a footer and a page layout, and my content lives in the middle. I'm barely going to touch the top and the bottom. All the work I'm going to do now is going to exist in this bit in the middle. Okay, what's the next thing? Oh. So I've just got separators in between my demos so I know where I am. Let's do something a little bit more complicated than just showing pre-existing text. So first thing we'll do is we're going to put we're going to change the hello function to take a name as a parameter. Then we're going to add a new handler, which I've lost. It's here. You can't see it. Name handler. So I'll come back to this in a second. And we're going to add a second route that says get hello, and then we're going to have a parameter in the path, and that gets used here. So from the context, we can use a helper function that will get routing information, and from the route, we can get string for the key name. I will freely admit that none of the code here is in any way safe or healthy or whatever. It's all it's lacking tests and it's lacking resiliency and all of that stuff. But that's easy enough to do when it gets in the way of showing what we're doing. So this time when we run this, I've just lost the screen.
Should come back in a minute.
Oops, a bit keen there.
There you go.
Right. So same one here, but if I go and actually type I've got things with a path. This is not shiny on you. Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what the other one on the other side did as well.
Yeah. So Mark is frantically clicking things. Right, okay, yeah. So we can parameterize things. Really, yes. How many do you need? Right. Close the browser. Hello world. Hello world with a parameter. Not the most complicated thing in the world. But the code is nice and simple, and the point is to show that the code is not complicated. Peter was talking about minimal APIs, and this is very much the same thing. And you're joining small pieces together to make your life things right. Real data. So my system, we use MongoDB. This was gifted to me when I turned up, and it's fine. MongoDB is quite nice. One of the challenges when you're developing applications is if I'm using a database, how do I write my code locally when I'm using a server database? Once upon a time, this was horrid and hard. Nowadays, you just say, well, I'll just spin it up locally. And that's actually pretty good. Although, again, it's still a bit more interesting than perhaps one might like. And so Microsoft produced Aspire. Hands up who's used Aspire. Okay. If you haven't used Aspire and you're doing .NET stuff, you really need to take a look. It is amazing. It does lots and lots of things, some of which I use and some of which I don't. Two key things that I use it for that are really good is one, it lets you do logging and full telemetry on your desktop really easily. And the other is it lets you do orchestration in much the same way as you might do with a Docker file, but it's done in .NET code, and it gives you some advantages in terms of wiring things together. So, oops. Let me start by showing you, that's right. So I'm going to use Aspire to spin up a Mongo container, MongoDB in a container, that I'm then going to use from my application. All you have to do to add a Mongo container is go basically add MongoDB, and that's just to give it a tag. A couple of clever things. I was trying not to be clever, but a couple of clever things. You can do this with MongoDB. You can say within it files and give it a data folder path. And this is a Mongo thing more than a .NET thing. And it will look in that and say, is there a bit of JSON called init? And it can do stuff with it. The second thing is, for the purposes of demonstration, I'm going to run the container continuously. Whether you do or not, in your case, will depend very much on what you're doing. For tests, you probably don't want that, because if it's persistent, then the data stays changed. But for development purposes, if you don't mind messing with your tables, carry on. So then, you don't have to read this. This is a big lump of JavaScript that I actually wrote. God help me. It took me about 5 goes to get it to this point. What this does is it goes and looks for data files. There is a limit on the size of the file you can copy into your MongoDB container. Ask me how I know. So this one, you can have multiple files and load them all up. It's just a little bit of magic. The data file, this is exported MongoDB JSON with some very small amounts of test data in it that I'm going to use. And then to use it, I do with reference MongoDB and wait for MongoDB to spin up. So don't start this until that's ready. And then basically that says stick a connection string into an environment variable that your code can see. The other thing that Aspire gives you, and it's an open source project that Microsoft has that has no dependency on anything else. They do, I've forgotten the word now, service discovery. It's a very simple, quite elegant way of doing service discovery. I'm not using it, but it's worth investigating. And as I said, the library is independent of Aspire, so you can use it regardless. So I've taken basically the same application, and now let's add some more stuff. So instead of my hello, I'm going to start with a couple of bits of content. So I'm going to take a product, which was the bit JSON that you saw just there, and I'm going to make a list item out of it. So I'm going to take the ID and the name, and I'm going to return a list item. So then I'm going to have a product list, which takes a list of products, and I'm going to take those list of products, and I'm going to map them to a product row. I'm going to stick them all as a list into an unordered list. I'm going to return that. Then I'm going to change my root handler. So it's almost exactly the same as it was before. But what I've done is, I've lost it now. I had it in front of me, I've lost it. Root handler is, there it is, sorry. Right, I'm added line. I'm going to load the products. I've got a little bit of database handling. I'm going to have a database, ignore the filter, I'm going to have page 1. And I didn't do zero-page paging because of reasons. So then, the content becomes the product list that we just defined with the list of products that we just loaded. I've got a whole load of boilerplate for getting the MongoDB database. You don't see that, not much fun. And then I'm going to change I'm not going to change anything because I don't need to. I'm going to wait for Aspire. I'm going to do Aspire run. So rather than doing .NET run, I'm doing Aspire run. Because when you do that, it runs the app host, so the code with the reference to MongoDB in, and then it calls my application code. Hopefully it won't take too long to load. Right, there we go. So you didn't see it because it loaded up fast enough, but here's my MongoDB running, and here's my bulk update application running. And if I look at the console here, somewhere back in the depths of here, it will tell me that it was inserting data, which you don't want to see. And I've got the little bits of startup logging that the builder does, and we can just go load that. And there, it's read from MongoDB, and it's processed all the stuff, and it's stuck in the page. And that's the reason I have a footer, because now you can see the stuff. Okay, so we close that. The next slide says, don't forget to stop Aspire. Because guess what I kept doing? So now, we're going to I'm going to add a new handler. So page, I'll move that up. I'll move that up. I'm going to add another handler to handle display of a page. I told you I shouldn't have called it. I should have called it layout of a page. The handle display of a page of products. And the only difference here is that I'm going to do exactly the same tricks before. I'm going to add a page as a parameter, and I'm going to run that. And I'm waiting whilst it builds the outpost. Starting dashboard, there we go, so we'll do that. Now I've got two of them because I forgot to close them. The bit I missed was I added a link on here. So all the link does is all the link's going to do is it's going to link to page 2, and it just goes through. And I've got lots of pages, and it loads like that. So the naughties are calling, and they want their website back. Oh, sorry, one last thing. Every time, can you see the clock's all the way over there. Every time I click the page, I'm doing a reload, so the time changes. I knew I put clock there for a good reason. So this isn't fun. And as I said before, the whole purpose here is to be able to select lots of items and do stuff. I don't know if anybody's tried doing multi-select over paged interfaces. It absolutely sucks. It really, really does. You can do it, but it sucks. You thought UWP was better than that. Okay. So let's carry on. And it says stop as far again, and I was going to forget to do it again. Right. So, talking about trying to keep it simple. So far, we've got ASP.NET. Is it simple? Probably not, but it is fast, it's efficient, and there is a huge .NET ecosystem that goes with it. We've got F#. I like F#. I think it is terse and expressive. I think it is harder to make mistakes. Ultimately, you could probably do the same thing with C#. I just happen to like F#. And then Falco. So Falco sitting on top of ASP.NET, got a fairly direct link from root to handler, just like we would do with minimal APIs, but habitually in F#, you don't write the code in where the endpoint is, you write it in the function anyway. Because you're writing functions, it's almost always easier. Highly functional DSL for doing markup. If we want to do a callback to AI, and this is the only way I will do, Claude understood. I was pasting actual HTML into the chat window, and Claude was giving me the F# markup to put in my code, so that was quite things. We have a relatively easy way to separate our concerns. If you say that anything I'm doing to the page is a view and should only take an input of data, and then it becomes easy to do that. If you want to test your views, you can test your views as pure functions, and there we go. At the moment, I'm just doing server-side code, so I don't think there's nothing clever in that sense. And I've got Aspire because it's easy to run a complex stack locally, and it gives you observability. We had a little bit look at the observability. We'll have a bit more look in a moment. So this is the thing. The user experience at this point, probably not great. So this is where HTMX comes in. And I've lost the slide there. I first heard about HTMX when somebody said, I am writing web applications in pure Prolog. And it was kind of like, yeah, really? I learned Prolog in 1982. And it's kind of surprising. So I went to have a look, and I went, okay, it's a client-side Java library, a JavaScript library, sorry. And I looked at it a bit more and thought, okay, that is a bit clever. And then I was listening to .NET Rocks, and Rendell was on, and he was talking about keeping things simple, so I stole that. And he said HTMX is amazing because you don't have to write client-side code, you just have to write server code. So on HTMX's website, this is the motivation they describe. Why should only these things be able to make web requests? Why should only click and submit events trigger them? Why should only get and post methods be available? Why should you only be able to replace the entire screen? Where with these constraints, HTMX completes HTML hypertext. I am not even going to get into whether it's hypertext or not. There is a Software Engineering Radio episode where the author talks about this. He's much more eloquent than I am on the subject, and it's really interesting. It doesn't matter, because as far as I'm concerned, I only have to update a little bit of the page, and I get at least 80% of the interactivity I want after writing client-side code. Now that's probably motivating. Is it simple? Well, let's see if we can find out. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a script tag that says, this is a helper function to get me the script from HTMX. And I don't care what it does because I don't have to. I'm then going to change my next page, my link. I'm going to change it to a button. And this is where the fun starts. So, whereas before that was a link, I made it a button, and I'm going to add an HX attribute. I'll show you the attributes in the web page. The HX attribute saying get page. That's the same endpoint that we've already got. Haven't changed anything. I'm going to target this. And what I'm going to do is, when I target it, I'm going to swap the HTML. Then I'm going to do something. I'm going to change my page handler so that instead of getting the whole page, so instead of using the page template and getting all of everything, I'm just going to get one thing, which is the list of products and the next page line. This messes me around ever so slightly. There isn't anything in Falco that I'm aware of, I may have missed it, to allow you to return multiple HTML elements. It assumes you're always going to want to return one thing. So you can return a div or paragraph or a whole page. So I had to cheat a bit and do something that renders individual nodes into a string and returns it as an HTML string. That works. It's hacky. At some point, I'll do a proper extension to do that. And that's all the changes I'm going to make. So I've added the script. I've changed the link to a button, calling the same endpoint as I had before, but I've changed what the endpoint responds with from being the whole page to just being the product list and the page link. So that's a bit where I pray quite a lot. Connecting to our post. Starting dashboard. I always forget to close all the tabs. Right. So, clock says 26 up in the top. Here's the list as before. If I click the button and do load more, clock hasn't changed. And what I've done is I've replaced the button with a list of items and a button. And I can keep doing that. endlessly. Clock still hasn't changed. So if we look at the, if we inspect, because I was going to forget to do that. I can make that bigger. Can you see that? Just about. Right. Here's the button. There's my attribute get. So get page 6. Target is this. And swap is the outer HTML. So I have taken a very simple piece of HTML and I've annotated it with very simple attributes. And as a consequence of that, what I get is an ability to change just a very small amount of page, because the only bit of the page I'm changing is the button. Obviously, simple page, not a lot of stuff on it. Most pages, the amount of boilerplate that lives in any standard web page is terrifying, frankly. And that's before you look at shopping sites. Dear God, they're awful. I should know I own one. Anyway, so that's really the clever bit. That's what HTMX is doing. It's letting you attach some stuff. It's going to say stop as well because I always forget. Lets you use a very small amount of attributes and markup to do complicated things because somebody else has already done all the work for you. Now, that's not really very pretty and it's not an awful lot of help to anyone. So let's add a bit more stuff. So if I change the product row, you'll see what this looks like in a minute. I'm going to have to change the content a bit again because what I've done now got is I've now got, instead of having a list, using unordered lists runs into certain problems. The gap between each section is not really what you want. So now I'm just returning a straight list of divs of product. So I'm going to change the content again, and all I'm saying here is this is a list, this thing in square brackets is a list, and the app just joins them together. And you can tell me a better way of doing that. Maybe not. And again, I've barely changed anything. Mostly I changed the function that returned the product. I didn't change anything in between. And yeah, post. Don't forget to close the browser. There you go. That's starting to look like something a bit more useful. And this is literally the progression I went through. Can I display a list of stuff? Okay. Can I make it look pretty? Okay. Whilst I remember, let me just have a quick show you what we get here. This is wired up using OpenTelemetry. That's a whole other conversation. I can come back and do that if you want. You can see there's my fine product. Here I am going to MongoDB, and there's my query. If you're not running with traces, spans and traces activities in .NET, speak with traces and spans, this isn't easy to get right in the first place, but it's incredibly valuable. And as I said, you can see, you get to see timing and all kinds of good stuff. And loading up the first one took nearly half a second. Nearly half a second. And loading up the second page, it's like, yeah, I've got this. Right. So we've got lots of stuff. We're loading it nicely. It looks pretty. So, okay, if I can, oops, please tell me to break it with my, okay. Stop spar again. I still didn't. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do something to actually update the data. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a helper to create a drop-down list. It's a function. Components in Blazor, functions in F#. Then I'm going to add an update panel. So I'm going to take the drop-down list I just created. I'm going to call it team, or name it team, and I've got some data items hidden away you can't see. Okay, this is on GitHub. It's private at the moment. I will make it public when I'm done, so you can see if you want. And then I can't remember whether I put highlights on this. I'm going to show you first. This one is going to do a post to a new endpoint I haven't designed yet. It's going to target an update form. It's going to swap the outer HTML. And then I've got this extra bonus one here, confirm. Made a button. I did that, and I've got an extra thing on here that says confirm. There you go. I should trust myself more. I'm going to create, I think, an update elements piece that says it's an update team and a horizontal rule afterwards. I'm going to add a form. We need a form because when we do the post, we want to be able to pull some data down with us. And the form is going to be the update elements and the content is the product because I'm in the page. That's right, yes. I'm in the product page. There's my content. I'm going to do the form. The form's going to have the update elements. Exactly the same before. And then I've got new handler. At this point, we have to get async because when you get the form back, it needs to be async. So we get the form, see the exclamation mark there. That means that's a wait. So it's basically a wait, get form. And then the target team, we're going to read from the form the value of the team drop-down list selection. It's all going to be lovely. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to read, when I created the list, I added the ID of the object from the database as key somewhere. No. What did I do? No, list top map. Product update. Trust me, I'm a programmer. When we've got the team to update it to, we've got the IDs. So we're going to update the team. Do async, yeah. There should be error handling, all kinds of stuff on there. It's a presentation demo, sorry. And then when we've done the update, we'll just reload the first page again. Obviously, we need to add a route. So here we are, adding a post this time. Still a function. There's my route, off we go. So, problem with doing live code is you have to wait for it to compile. What do I forget to do every time? So now what we've got, here's my stuff. Clearly, when I pulled this data, we had just had a load of new product in from West Ham. So we can do that. We do update team, update for all the selected products. And now you can see I've got West Ham United here, here, and here, but not anywhere else because those are the only ones I selected. So we've displayed the data. We've selected some but not all of the items. We've selected a team to update them to. We've applied the update, and there it is. Because I made the database persistent, it's going to stay there. So, not bad, not bad. And I can show you, again, if I remember, if we look at look at the traces. Here's my post. The whole thing took quite a long time, and I'm curious as to why that is. There's my update product. And somewhere, where did it go? this says update product and set, if the IDs are in this, so those are the 3 IDs, set the team to West Ham United. Isn't that magic? I love that. I'm tolerably good at MongoDB now, but I'm not great. So you will see functional people talk about making everything a function, partly because you get quite good at generalizing things. So if we wanted to update the color as well as the team, instead of writing a whole new function, I've just changed the update function from being update team to update field and added a field name. So I've changed it there and there and there and there, and that's about it really. I've added an update field for color using colors, which is using the same drop-down list as we used before, but with a different set of data. I've replaced the update handler from being a team-specific update handler to one that has a field in, and I've added an extra function. Yes, I've had an extra function, which is what the handler's supposed to do. That's the same, except I've got field instead. When I do the do here, before that said product.update team, I'm now just passing in a function. And then I need to update the endpoints. So this is the original update team endpoint, and now I've added a function that says, please update the team. And then this is my new update color one, and I've got a different function that says update color. This is a definition of simple that's really complicated. Excuse me. And then, so I can run update again. What have I done? This is supposed to be like that. Oh, that was stupid. Give me a second. Right. I got the I managed to get the magic thing out of sync. Right. Okay. I got the magic code edit was out of sync, so we'll run this manually, I hope. Proves it's real code. Hey, I'm amazed we got this far. I mean, yeah. Oh. What else have I done? I forgot to save, yes. Brilliant, thank you. I normally live in Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code, in order to use the nice demo technology that almost worked. Right, so after all that entertainment, you can see now that I've got, not only have I got a team, but I've also got a color, so I could update those. black wants to be black. And that's the bit I missed out commenting before. Because I put the attribute on that said, do that, I've got this. That's the simplest way you can put a confirmation dialog up. That didn't work at all. That worked somewhat. I must have missed the box. Yes, thank you. You can do an awful lot more, but to do that, all you have to do is put one attribute on the server side. So I will close those this way. Do that. It's going to launch that because that's what I got to. Okay, and now I remember why it keeps opening up the other tabs. So the last thing I've got to show, because it's kind of part of the same thing, is filtering. This is more about thought processes than anything else. So I'm going to add. Whoops, that was a mistake. I'm going to add a whole load of stuff. I'm going to add ignore the label. I've got an input, which is just text. That's either going to be the filter string or an empty string. And I've added a button. Technology, who is it? Button's going to post a filter. I'm looking at this and going, I'm updating the form. I should just be updating the product list. So I've over-engineered this. I need to under-engineer a bit. And I've added this, an indicator. And I'll show you that in a moment. And I've tacked an image onto the end, but it's got styles such it won't be visible by default. What's important there? It's got a class on HTMX indicator. I can't remember whether that's important or not. Doesn't really matter. So I'm now going to update the product page again. And this time I'm going to add filter elements up above that. So I'm just basically the same as the update elements. I'm going to put something in. And then my list of content is now getting a bit larger in the form. I have to do chunks of stuff to get the filter, which is, where did I get the filter? There it is. In the page handler, I do get form and I get the filter string as well. And then what I'm doing is I'm passing the filter into my load page function. Because changing the load page function mid-demo was too much like hard work. Then I'm going to add a new handler for filter, and I'm just going to stick a 1 second delay to pretend it's like it's taking a long time. And yes, that's me passing the filter, which I just said. And I'm going to do a little bit of stuff. This is my database code that I was hiding from you previously. When we get the filter in, if the filter is empty, we use a MongoDB filter for empty. And if it's not empty, all I'm going to do, and this is horribly naughty, but it works really well, because I know who my audience is. I'm living behind a secure password. I'm not even sure that injection works in MongoDB if you're using filters. So all I'm going to do is assume that the filter is a valid MongoDB query, and use that as my filter in here. And for the sake of the exercise I'm doing, my user more than happy to do that. And in this case, simple is about only doing as much as you need to make your user happy. If it becomes a problem, we'll do something more clever. But in the meantime, she was much happier to have it on her desktop today than for me to spend ages trying to work out how to do that in a more complicated fashion. So then I need to add a filter endpoint. Yay, I didn't stop it, but it worked. Hit that key soon. So now we can do a query that says if the name is Newcastle, there we go. We have a filter, and that took almost no time at all. I can take those and I can update the team to Newcastle. So then we can do a new query. So if we say team, so that I can remember to point out my little dots. And then we can set the color to black and white. And if we look for oops. No, don't put question mark in because that would probably end badly. Anybody any good at regexes? Because I'm not. And oh, it didn't work. Oh,
black/white.
no, it should just be.
You didn't set it for us.
I didn't set anything. Oh, there you go. I'm right. I give up. If I apply the filter on an empty page, it comes back, or I go home, it goes back. It was almost a good demo. But you can see that the query works and the filtering works. And if you know, I could open up the traces and you would see my filter running through. It says stop it spiraling out. I don't really need to because. Right. So the whole point was to talk about how I solved a real world problem with an application that looks remarkably similar to that, without going overboard on the technology and without using things that I didn't understand, and in a way that I think come together quite simply. .NET and F# is that simple? Well, yeah. I don't think any language ecosystem is simple. What I think is that if you know .NET and you know F#, or if you know .NET and you know C#, there's nothing in the underlying stuff there that's particularly hard. Pretty much anyone who can work out how to return HTML from an endpoint can do the HTML part. Falco and HTMX. I think Falco is lovely, or the alternative F# frameworks on top of ASP.NET. I think the endpoints are very clear and understandable. I think once you get your head around a couple of bits of wrinkle, it becomes very easy to do quite complicated things because you're just focusing on one endpoint at a time and one function at a time. And where you have multiple functions, you get to compose them together. Yes, Peter?
Is Falco only an F# thing, or is it available in C# as well?
It would only be an F# thing because it's using all of that is composed in that way.
So I quite like the syntax. It reminds me of CoffeeScript.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good question, and I'm afraid no, you're limited in that. Aspire is a bazillion things, and getting Aspire, it can be very simple or it can be ridiculously complicated. Working out how to populate a Mongo database was horrendous. Working out how to do things that were not the way that the Aspire team thought you should do them has been interestingly challenging. However, if you have Aspirified your application and it works and it doesn't, you're not limited to .NET. They've got support for Node and Java and God knows what else. Then you get an F5 experience where you clone the repository and you hit go. And all of the orchestration will be done for you. There's a whole lot of hand waving around that. It's never quite that perfect, but it can get remarkably close. I love this. They sat on one of their shows and said, "Oh, we hate having to install tools," and then said, "Oh, but install the Aspire tool globally first." Formatting error again. So HTMX. I showed you a teeny weeny bit of what HTMX is capable of, but I also showed you most of the things that you need to know. I think HTMX is amazing. And the reason is, and this is why I say I think this is simple, you do things you already know, which is how to produce HTML and render it to screen with attributes. You add a very few things to it, and a whole load of nice stuff happens. Because I've been doing this for a while, the list of things that you can do with those attributes is huge. If you need to, and we're not because I didn't want to be here for another 15 minutes, you can attach more to it. So for the checkboxes, my user said, I would like a select all checkbox. So that's about that much JavaScript that just hooks it all up together. And one gotcha that says you have to redo it every time because otherwise you're not running the checkboxes you want. But it's only one little piece of very purposeful JavaScript, which, as Peter says, you can get the AI to write for you, rather than having to understand the whole thing. So yeah, I mean, I think that most of that is, given that what I already know and what I did, that there was very little to learn that was new, and very little to learn that I would regard as particularly complex. And the composability of all the F# stuff, I think, helped keep it simple. So yes, I do think that was keeping it very simple. Whole load of resources. Falco is the Falco framework, htmx.org, SE radio episode. There's aspire.dev. The tooling that I've been used to do the presentation, which has been doing all the typing for me, is demo time. I'm Murph on GitHub. I will put these in a gist and make the repo public, and I'll put the links into Meetup and LinkedIn. That's me. Yeah, any questions? Yes?
Just when you were doing the HTMX stuff, I noticed the HX module that you were using. Is that something that you wrote yourself, or is that like a package that's...
It's a Falco package. So Falco, there's a Falco.htmx is a set of, those attributes are incredibly easy to write. I mean, I'm not sure it's set up to show them, but they are incredibly easy to write. They're just an XML node. So somebody has gone to the effort of putting all of the HTMX attributes into an F# file, so that they're just there. I think the same thing exists. I know the same thing exists for other platforms and for other sets of tooling and for other F# frameworks. So one of the interesting things is, smoke alarm in the kitchen again. That's right, Chef, she's not dead. But this markup pattern with the attributes as a list and the content as a list has been done more than once by more than one F# framework. And the really fun thing is that you can swap them around. You're not bound to use the Falco one with Falco. You can swap them around. So I've used the other one I've used a different one totally out of a web page context. I was using it to do email templates. So there you go. Anything else?
There are bindings for Blazor, Blossom, and Razor Pages as well.
Yeah, I thought there might be. So, I mean, I think you could probably, the HTML will be a bit more interesting, but you could almost certainly do this with something like minimal terminal endpoints and Razor components.
It's helpers and
Yeah. But I mean, little snippets of JavaScript. Again, nice because it's in F#, because it's all functions, it's really easy to join the two together. Slightly less so in HTML. Not HTML, C#. Although I'm sure somebody will look at something like that and say, no, actually, we can make it easy. I would imagine.
to be fair, you can spit it out using string interpolation.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Anyone else? Or do you all want to go home? Okay, thank you.